And we're back with another episode of Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from the ISFF Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, as well, of course, don't forget the Lakers Fast Break, where we cover the latest news and information on the Lakers. We'll be doing that after the show tonight. We'll go ahead and get on out of here and then go into a new show, the Lakers Fast Break, later up, coming up right here on the channels that you're now watching on. So go ahead and stay tuned for that. But also, as well, go ahead and make sure that you are available every single time out whenever the Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Lakers Fast Break, or Pop Culture Cosmos is out there indeed. Plus, give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could like and subscribe, become a member of the Lakers Fast Break today for just $2.99. Do all that good stuff for us, and it's much appreciated from all of us at the Lakers Fast Break, and of course, Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Well, Week 10 is now already underway after an exciting game that just ended as we're talking right now, with the Baltimore Ravens escaping with a win over the Bengals, 35-34. I'm just happy, as I told Search and Destroy just a second ago, that we just had an outstanding game for Jamar Chase, a guy who I have on my Yahoo Fantasy Football team. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a good start with that. It is, of course, Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for watching, listening. But it is NFL Week 10. And the biggest news of this weekend is not Jamar Chase getting 264 yards on 11 receptions and 3 touchdowns, although that's close. The biggest news is Christian McCaffrey has been cleared to play for this upcoming Sunday. And the bigger question for many fantasy football owners who've been scrambling all season long, who have him on their team, is he back in enough time to save their season? So we discussed that with the guys, plus their picks on NFL Week 10 and more. Of course, a trip to the doghouse indeed as well. Woof, woof. But first is Christian McCaffrey, and here, first man up, first man here, good man indeed. You got to go ahead and check him out today at LakersBall.com, and of course, the Lakers Fast Break as well. He owns Simblades, SimBladesWithAY.com. It is Joe Soro. Joe, good to have you here. Question for you. Let me ask you this. McCaffrey coming back into the lineup this Sunday. For a lot of teams, it derailed them quite a bit. Does he come back in enough time to save the season for many teams out there? Yes.
If he's healthy, and it did derail me. It definitely lost me week 1 because I didn't get word that he was not going to play until Monday, and I couldn't get any other running back. So it cost me that week. And it's been, if he had just been his normal self, just getting normal numbers, I wouldn't have had to have scrambled at the running back position, because most of the guys that I've been getting it's been an issue. It's been an issue trying to keep. I'm okay now. I've gotten Hubbard in there. Rodney's doing well in Tampa. I have Connor doing well, but initially it was a problem because I was focused on other things instead of running back, and I was losing a lot at the beginning there. Lost a lot at the beginning in this league, and I'm kind of sort of fighting back. But I keep losing by 3 or 4 points, and one of my players every week gets injured and can't play a full game, and that's probably cost me at least 3 weeks out of the 7 now that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been a frustrating. In one of my leagues, it's been very frustrating. I haven't been able to kind of catch a break in any of it, but I guess if I can just have McCaffrey play like he did last year, the remaining time, I think I have a good shot at getting to the playoffs still.
Also your day, good man indeed. He is one half of the Domination Sports Nation podcast, which you need to go ahead and subscribe to out there as well. It is Chris Sardieri. And Chris, good to have you back in the saddle, my friend, once again. I know that you and I could get together earlier this week because of all the stuff that's going on, busyness and all that. But week 10 has started off on an exciting note with this exciting game. Obviously, it's going to help a lot of fantasy football owners here. But what is really going to help fantasy football owners in many cases is the return of Christian McCaffrey. Is it too little, too late, or is it right enough time? Is he writing in at just the right time for fantasy football owners?
Yeah, if he's in game shape, like I'm presuming he is, I think it is the right time because, here in the middle of the season, not only in the NFL and fantasy is when you can make your move. And, I've been in leagues where if you've only played 14 regular season games, if you're 7-7 and you win points on the tiebreaker, you can go on a nice run and win it all. So I think if you've got McCaffrey, he'd help you. The waiver wire is pretty much completely barren for running backs. So I think it's a good time that he is playing now. Now, again, you can't play doctor, but you got to hope he's in game shape. And to your original point, tonight's game did not help me going up against Joe Burrow, and we're completely in a points deficit right now. We'll hopefully rally back, but I'd like to give special thanks to the Baltimore defense this evening.
Absolutely. So, what an exciting game. Absolutely. For me, again, a great start for Jamar Chase. 50 points or thereabouts in many leagues out there. So, definitely a good way to get started. But, Joe, let me bring it back to you again. When you look at it now, again, you lost a lot of games early because you just, I'm not going to say you put all your carts into one horse, but a lot of times your number one player gets hurt. It is so hard to make up for that. You've been scrambling all season long in many cases to try and find subsequent replacements. But are you still in the position that you can still get some things done this season, get into the playoffs, and do some damage?
Well, I think McCaffrey was the problem week one and maybe week two, maybe even week three, but not after that. I can usually balance out of issues just because I pay attention to the details a little more. My main issue, actually, if I had to pick one, was I've had really bad luck with players that don't finish games. It's been probably, if you factor in the McCaffrey thing and players not finishing out games and losing by 3 or 4 points, I'd say the injuries at the worst time where they can't finish the game have probably cost me more games than anything else. If that can stop, then I feel pretty comfortable that I have a good team that can make some noise in the playoffs if I can get in. And that's where I'm at. It's just, fantasy football in a lot of ways is kind of like poker. Yeah, you got some skills and you can maneuver certain things and pay attention to certain things, but you also need a little bit of luck. And then at the same time, you might have some bad luck as well that goes your way. And that's essentially what this is. You're doing your best to hedge your bet that week, depending on the circumstances. My cousins had Burrow on the bench tonight, right? Who knew that Burrow was going to throw what he threw on a short week against Baltimore at home? How the hell do you know that he's going to do that? Maybe Jamar Chase is a little bit more realistic in terms of him having a good game. But how do you know Burrow is going to have a game the way he did on a short week against Baltimore? And that's the unlucky part for him, and that happens a lot in this fantasy football world. But if McCaffrey can just get me 15, 20 points a week, I think I'm going to be in really good shape to finish the season out well. And I'm hoping my bad luck with the injuries at the worst time has run its course so that I can finish the back half of this season and make some noise, because I feel very confident that I'm going to have the right team going into the playoffs. Should that happen?
So I ask you, Chris, and once again, it is Inside Sports Fantasy Football. I'm here along with Joe Sorrell from Lakers Fast Break. Also, as well, Chris Ardieri from Domination Sports Nation. Chris, I want to ask you, what does this do as far as a boost for the 49ers? They've actually got in his place. I know it hasn't resulted always with wins on the scoreboard, but they've gotten pretty darn good running attack from Mason and then his replacement when he got injured. So with that in there, with McCaffrey coming back, getting the majority of the touches, obviously for if you're a fantasy team, the Masons and everything has to be changed around a little bit if you got the 49ers offense. But what does this do for the 49ers for the rest of the season?
I think it helps them immensely. I mean, not only is McCaffrey a better running back than Mason, but he's a threat to catch the ball out of the backfield. And, as we've seen, Purdy's been kind of at times been forced to throw more, and sometimes that results in turnovers or just kind of a one-dimensional offense. And people are writing off the 49ers. And I say definitely do not do that. The Seahawks look like they're not going to be contenders. I know the Cardinals are floating around, but they don't have enough talent. I mean, at this point, I think it's going to come down to a 2-horse race between them and the Rams, and I'll go out on a limb and McCaffrey stays in the lineup. I think they're positioned well to win the NFC West.
So with that, Joe, do you concur with Chris that the arrival of Christian McCaffrey, again, they have a strong running game. Without him, it's going to get substantially better with him. Plus, obviously, the fact he's one of the best receivers coming out of the backfield in history, much less, just in the league. Where does that put the 49ers in your book as far as I know? KC's riding high. A lot of people are talking about that, but there's a lot of teams in the NFC, the Buccaneers, the Commanders. There's a few teams in the like the Eagles. A lot of teams are right in the mix, but what does a McCaffrey-led 49ers team do for you on that side of the ball?
It definitely opens up the offense if he's catching balls off, getting those screen passes. That's easing up Purdy a little more. Scoring at the goal line. The NFC right now, other than the Lions, it's not very strong in my book. And the Niners have the cachet. They have enough of a, I guess, conditioned team to turn it on maybe another notch in the back half of the season to make a run, which they've had a habit of doing. There's a moment usually halfway through the season where they start to really, really play ball well. And I was initially thinking that Christian McCaffrey might have had a similar injury to Kevin Durant, where things were kind of iffy in his calf. And you got to be careful with that. You don't want to rush him in there too quickly. Otherwise, the results usually are not good. But it seems like maybe he didn't. Maybe they left him out a little bit just to condition him, or I should say, save him for the stretch run and not get abused as much in the first half of the season. I think that played a big part. I think he could have come back earlier. Again, I don't have any inside information. I'm just assuming he could have come back earlier, but I think by not having him play the first half of the year, maybe that was kind of a planned thing a little bit to say, hey, look, let's get you kind of fresh. We have a running back that can kind of cover a little bit. We're not going to really worry about our division too much. The Rams aren't playing division winning ball. Seattle, they're playing okay. And then, of course, Arizona's Arizona. So there's a good chance that if we can kind of bounce the water a little bit in the first half, you come back, then we can go ahead and start focusing on winning the division and likely, hopefully, getting probably a 2 seed in this, because I think Detroit's going to end up getting the first.
Yeah, Lions have been playing really outstanding ball. And the 49ers, if they get McCaffrey back, should easily beat the Rams or anybody right there on the west side. So then it looks like it might be a rematch coming up in the not too distant future between the 49ers and the Lions at this rate. Although, again, there are other teams, I I don't want to sell too short the Commanders, who've had a really good season with Daniels and some of the other teams. But yeah, with the falter, like the Eagles as well, against if Barkley gets hot, Chris. But right now, with the arrival of McCaffrey, they've been, the 49ers have been like that mash unit that's been able to hold just enough together, just long enough for him to return and still have a shot at a really good season.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of emphasis is placed on getting home field advantage and only the top seed gets it, but I don't think that will deter a team like the 49ers. Yeah, would they like to play at home? Sure. But I mean, if they have to go into Detroit inevitably deep into the playoffs, that's an indoor game. I mean, the crowd would be all fired up. But as we saw last year, the 49ers can definitely play Detroit tough. But back to your point, I mean, there are contenders in the NFC, but I'm sure some of them will end up being pretenders. And to me, it just feels like at this point, if the 49ers get hot, we could have these same two teams facing off at sometime late in January. The Eagles, I think, are more a beneficiary of Dallas completely going into the tank and the Giants being horrible. So I think that game next Thursday night against the Commanders will definitely be interesting for NFC East positioning.
I'm so sorry. Whenever you talk about the Giants, Chris, I am so sorry.
There's nothing to be sorry about. Thankfully, I didn't have any expectations this year, but I can assure you I'm not getting up 6:30 Pacific time to go watch them play a pretty also horrible Panthers team in Germany.
Oh, that's just it kills me every time you say that, because I just hear the amount of disdain in your voice when you talk about the Giants, especially the fact that Barkley's having a great season for Philadelphia, and yeah, just does not look like the future's good for the Giants right now.
Yeah, that off-season Hard Knocks is a good concept, but it also kind of braced me and tempered expectations, to say the least, for the Giants season. The moment Dayball turned to Shane and said he liked Jaden Daniels the best, I should have known he was going to be the best quarterback out of this rookie class.
So it is, of course, Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It is Gerald Glassford along with Chris Sardieri and Joe Soro. Joe, it is week 10 in the NFL. It's already started. What a great game. I know some mistakes on the end. Of course, we saw missed calls like you guys were talking about, and also as well just why didn't he go for the PAT? But he wanted to go for the win. You're on the road. You go for the win. I always get that. But yeah, it should have gone to overtime, but it didn't. Still a great game nonetheless. Still some great stats in mind. But before we get to the get to the doghouse for this week, what are some of the games that you think look interesting to you out there for NFL Week 10, just as a fan or a fantasy football
owner? Well, obviously the Bucs Niners game is going to be. I'm going to be curious to see how that kind of comes out. If I have a lot of stock in that, because I have Mr. Baker Mayfield and Rashad White, as well as the kicker, and I'm going to need those points because I had to play Johnson from the Ravens, because everyone on my damn team is on a bye or sucks, and he only got me 1 point, and this is a league where no one's ever available on the wire, so I'm going to need Baker to hopefully drop a 40 spot like he did last week, and make up some ground that way. The other game that kind of has piqued my interest, just because I think it's that time of year where you could probably see a little bit of a letdown, which is the Chiefs and Broncos. Don't be surprised if the Broncos upset the Chiefs this week. I actually have them as my upset of the week, and I don't think Bo Nix is gonna be a franchise quarterback, but his athleticism does allow him to, and his physical, ability does allow him to do certain things, but he hasn't gotten to that point where there's enough tape on him from the NFL to where they can contain him pretty much at will. Right now, I think he's able to get through certain things I mean, he could get past that if he's got good work ethic and can continue to get better. But he's kind of gotten better each week in a lot of ways. And the Chiefs have been begging to lose some of these games the last few weeks, and I think there might be a possibility that this week they might not be able to get away with it.
If Baker Mayfield, Chris, has one of those, games he seems to pull out of just nowhere, like a 3 or 4 touchdown game, which he has done this season at times already, it could quite possibly be the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he played great Monday night. You can't fault him for his coach and the questionable decisions he made. But I kind of wanted to see what would have happened if maybe they even went for 2 points there. Well, they kind of had the Chiefs on the ropes, the opposite of what I thought about tonight's game. But that's just one thing that's really stood out to me this year. And I know Mayfield did well last year, but there was no proverbial jinx this time around. Between him and Sam Darnold, I'm wondering how many teams out there in the NFL are kicking themselves if they either let him go, didn't work with him, passed on him in free agency, because I think those are two of the unsung quarterbacks out there in fantasy. I mean, we dropped Anthony Richardson in one league and picked up Darnold. I mean, if our starter gets hurt, I think he's a quality fantasy football quarterback considering what's out there on waivers, and guys like Dak have gotten hurt, or other guys like Hurts who haven't really lived up to last year's stats. So I think those are great stories right there.
So let me get it to you, Chris, but then I'll bring it back to Joe. Is there any matchups you're looking at just as a casual fan or a fantasy football interest that you think is going to be of keen interest to individuals out there?
Yeah, for me, I think the Jets-Cardinals matchup, just because these are two teams that have kind of gone back and forth this year. At some point, they look like they were going to completely tank, and then there's other weeks like last week where the Jets really surprised on Thursday night. Garrett Wilson had a phenomenal game, but drilling down, I think it's a tale of two of the best young wide receivers in the NFL, and they both happen to be former Ohio State Buckeyes, and Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr., and these guys are really trending upward in fantasy the past few weeks, and I like to see them face off. Also, too, it's kind of interesting to see if the Jets are really going to go on this rally like Aaron Rodgers seems to think, or if the Cardinals are indeed contenders in the NFC West. So you got some good storylines there. I think James Conner's another guy. It's been a great story. Had a nice year last year. It's continued this year. And on the Jets side of the ball, Devontae Adams really hasn't gotten into the mix yet, but I'm just still waiting for Breece Hall to kind of make his mark. Is this the week he does it?
Absolutely. Xbox, I know. I think I would have put it in nicer terms for you, my friend. But Mark, the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2-7, not having a good season, even with the games that they play overseas. Yeah, it's just not working out for them right now. A lot of mistakes right there as far as I thought Trevor Lawrence would take that next step, Chris. I just am really, he is one of the most disappointing players for me this season. I know Daniel Jones, we've already gone over him and how he still has his job. I still don't know, but yeah, it is what it is. But Trevor Lawrence was the guy I really thought was going to take that next step, but unfortunately, that's not been the case.
Yeah, I mean, they ponied up a ton of money to extend his contract. They, supposedly Doug Peterson was going to be the help that he needed. They've surrounded him with allegedly more offensive weapons, and frankly, Brian Thomas Jr. has been a nice find at wide receiver. People don't talk about him as much. The poor guy seems to be getting hurt every other week, but I don't know what's going on with Lawrence. I mean, if it weren't for some of the other crap that's out there quarterback wise, we'd be talking about how he's one of the biggest number one overall pick busts in recent memory. But he keeps trending downward like this. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to keep firing the coach and bring someone in new, or is it really a Trevor Lawrence problem? I'm starting to wonder.
JSJ said Lawrence is getting paid $275 over 5 years. How much of that is guaranteed, JSJ? With the monopoly money that they have now out in the NFL, where you only should really look at the guaranteed. That's where I really want to know is how much is guaranteed on that contract before we say whether or not he's actually going to end up getting that $275. Because right now, the way he's playing, Joe, Trevor Lawrence, he ain't getting that 275 if it's not all guaranteed.
Something's going on in the NFL that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. And that is there's this dysfunction. There's this dysfunction with quarterbacks whom are getting drafted and then not given enough time or not coached correctly or are thrown in the fire too quick or are expected to become Patrick Mahomes in week 2. There's a lot of that going on, and there's just not enough development being allowed, even worse than even a few years ago. So the NFL needs to start evaluating what they're doing with these quarterbacks, because you have way too many quarterbacks right now, guys like Sam Darnold, guys like Baker Mayfield, who were thrown into the shitter, and all of a sudden they finally get somewhere where there's some coherent coach or coherent offense or philosophy, and they're flourishing. Anthony Richardson is the most recent one. Now, I'm not going to kind of blame I guess any team that's owned by an Irsay, you always kind of scratch your head anyways. He's kind of in line with the same ownership of the Cincinnati Bengals and Mike Brown. They're just complete and utter dipshits. But this seems to be a theme that continues to go on and on. Dak Prescott has been ridiculed in Dallas, mainly because he has a stupid owner who doesn't know how to run a football team. And this guy's been a very, very good quarterback, but he's always around dysfunction. And it's already very difficult to be in the NFL, number one. And it's extremely difficult to be a quarterback in the NFL. And to put it in perspective, okay, for a 9 straight season period, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady didn't win a Super Bowl. I want you to think about that for a second. From 2005 till 2013, 9 straight seasons. This was Brady's prime. They didn't win a Super Bowl. And these guys are dedicated day in, day out, night, day, solar eclipses, every single day, football, eating, drinking, and sleeping. And these guys didn't win a championship for almost a decade. You have any idea how long a decade is? So that's how hard it is. Yet you want guys like Dak Prescott to be Roger Staubach. You want Jalen Hurts to be Randall Cunningham with the Minnesota Vikings in 1998. And it's just, and Trevor Lawrence, I don't know what's going on in Jacksonville, but it almost looks like he doesn't know how to play football. So what's going on? Why does he all of a sudden not know how to play football? Is it a scheme thing? Is it just, is his talent around him not good enough? I'm watching these Jaguar games. I can't figure it out. It's been a weird couple of years with starting quarterbacks. I'm going to be honest. I'm not even being able to figure out what's going on. I really don't. I don't know that. What do you think, Gerald? I mean, am I missing something here?
No, not at all. It's been kind of weird.
Bryce Young? I mean, is Bryce Young really that bad? I mean,
from what I've seen.
I didn't think he was going to be – I thought he was going to be very good. He showed every reason why he'd be very good. How is he so bad? It doesn't make any sense.
I think it's the platform where he's on, most likely. But whether or not we say he's actually is bad, I think we have to see him in a different location first before you ultimately say he's total trash. But there
are guys talking about Herbert in L.A. Hey, what would it take to trade this guy for a whole? I'm like, are you nuts?
Herbert's got 10 touchdowns and 1 interception. Why would the Chargers be motivated to trade him?
That's the stuff I've heard. That's the hilarious part about that is, and Jim Harbaugh, you know, he's got the Chargers playing better than they were last year.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, what were you guys expecting, to be 8-0 with Jim Harbaugh? The expectations in the NFL have always been very, very high. It's always been obnoxious. But these last couple of years has been just unruly how bad the assessment of players are. The league has almost turned into the New York media everywhere now. It used to be just New York, Philly, Boston, those highly stressful Northeast kind of personality type areas. And of course, you do have the Lakers, because they've, the excellence there. And you have, who else would it be? San Francisco to some degree. But I mean, I don't really know what's going on in the NFL. I don't know. There's been a deficiency in quarterback play that I haven't seen since probably the 90s. I haven't seen this kind of deficiency since the 90s. And I don't know if it's necessarily the fact that the league has caught up or defenses have caught up to quarterback play and the rules, because defenses still stink to me. You don't really see any dominant defense because you really can't play any dominant defense. Every time I see Micah Fitzpatrick make a tackle at the right moment with his shoulder pad and not hitting the helmet, he's still getting called for penalties. And today's game against the Bengals, that roughing the passer on that last drive was a fucking joke. That was a joke. He was running full speed. He threw the ball. The guy, what do you want him to do? And then they don't make a call on the hold on Gesicki. That guy got mugged. It's just not good. It's not good. The product is not the product, and what's going on with expectations of these guys is just it's almost like your people who are running these things are people like fans, people that are armchair quarterbacks. There's no one there with any half a brain to know what's going on. So I don't know. I don't know what to say. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. I mean, we're talking about guys. Geno Smith didn't start for 7 years?
Yeah.
And I'm watching him play. Yeah, I know Seattle isn't gonna win a Super Bowl, but my God, how do you screw that up? How do you screw up? I mean, I know why the Baker Mayfield thing got screwed up, because it's the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns could, as one of my favorite quotes in the movie Casino, they could fuck up a cup of coffee. I mean, that's how bad they are. So I can understand that part, but the NFL right now needs to really start evaluating its ability to understand how this thing is supposed to be run. Otherwise, you're going to be playing carousel quarterback nonstop until the cows come home.
So with that, we now go ahead and take a trip out on the lawn. It is now, the weather's real nice. It's not too cold, although actually Search had said it's a little chilly, about 30 degrees. So maybe the trip to the front yard may be a little bit faster for him, but for us, we're heading out to the front yard, take a look around, and over there to your left, a little bit colder, but still right there looking at you is the dog looking at you. Woof, woof, woof. It's the doghouse. So Chris, I'll have you start off first. And by the way, Xbox, as much as Joe and I will always clown on the Lakers for some of their bad contracts, I just looked it up. For Watson, Deshaun Watson, it is $230 million guaranteed with a $45 million signing bonus. So, yeah. So with that, Chris, what do you have for your dog of the week?
Looking to get back in the winning track. Want to give special thanks to Jordan Love and his idiotic, to say the least, pass that got picked off in the rain. Had that not happened, the Packers would have covered. But if I don't know what the saying goes, ifs and buts and whatever. Jordan Love's your quarterback. Don't bet on him. But I see another home dog this week getting 3.5. And you're going to think I'm crazy out there, football fans. The Houston Texans playing the high-flying Detroit Lions at home, Sunday Night Football down in H-Town. How can you do this, Chris? The Texans look like crap against the Jets. Well, the Texans clearly don't play well on the road. And one thing I've noticed, to Joe's point about this mediocre season, is you can be up one week and down the next, like a Frank Sinatra song. And I think the Texans will play tough. They played well at home. I know the Lions were struggling a little bit in the rain last week, but I feel like they're going to be challenged by this Texans defense. Wouldn't be surprised if the Texans win outright, but yet again, as I beat into your heads week after week, I love home dogs. I love getting that extra 3.5. Vegas doesn't tend to throw those out there to us very much, so I'll take the Texans. Maybe they lose like a 20-17 game and still cover for you, or maybe C.J. Stroud kind of gets back into his groove, looking like last year's Stroud, and they end up winning the thing and surprising the Lions. So Texans are the pick this week.
There you go. What do you have? 3.5? Because that's what I have.
Yep, 3.5, and
Okay.
they are in Houston. So we'll see. I'm going back to the well a second week ago, and I'm gonna say C.J. Stroud's just a little bit better than Jordan Love, and he performs well.
Did you hear that, Xbox? We're making sure we're getting you some good stuff for entertainment purposes only. Joe, what do you have lined up for a underdog of the week in the doghouse?
I have Broncos covering at the very least against the Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by 7.5.
Really?
I have a feeling the Broncos are going to beat them.
The real reason why I say that's surprising to me is just after what you said about Knicks, about not being maybe a guy that you could commit to long term.
Yeah, long term, I don't. He would have to be. He would have to likely be Derrick Henry like work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think I could see him, because it would be a waste if he didn't, because he has a really good coach. Sean Payton is a good coach, and he can go a long way in his career if he puts himself in the room and busts his rear end. He's got the athletic ability. He definitely has the athletic ability to be a Josh Allen type player, but he's gonna have to put the work in, and he's really, really, really gonna have to do it at a higher level than everybody else in a lot of ways. But in these kind of games, again, with the Chiefs kind of treading water a lot of this season, at some point they're gonna run into a wall, and it's a division opponent. The Broncos are favored by 7.5. I'm not a big fan of that kind of a spread when you're kind of barely winning sometimes, and you're facing a team like Denver, who's kind of not bad, but they can have their moment where they can kind of score and move the ball, and he can move the ball. Bo Nix can use his legs to move those chains. That usually tends to kind of stifle teams sometimes. It kind of takes their will out. And if they're competitive in the, let's say going into the third quarter, I'm pretty sure that they have a chance of winning it, and worst case, definitely covering.
Search, I'd save that for the LFB or maybe after a post game, because that's probably when I get enough volume for 50 likes. But anytime you decide to do so,
my family gets. I'm sorry, Gerald. My family gets on me all the time about this stuff. They're begging me to play bets for fun. And,
entertainment purposes
only. And I go, it's funny. There's sometimes principle ahead of money. And I feel like a lot of the reasons why these things are happening in all the major sports leagues is because they finally come to grips and have allowed gambling to be a big part of their revenue. And for me, if I end up rolling with it, I end up feeling like I'm the hypocrite when I'm complaining. So that's where I stand on my little high horse. I'm sorry, I had to say that.
No worries. And Search, again, I truly appreciate your kindness. Thank you again. As far as whenever, if you decide to go ahead and pass down memberships, it's always greatly appreciated. But Chris, before we head on out, my doghouse pick of the week, I'm going with something a little bit tighter. I would have said the Dolphins. That one may end up before game time, them maybe becoming a dog. If that happens, I'd probably lean money on them against the Rams. Sorry, cool bro, but right now they're the favorites, so I will go ahead and
suck it, cool bro.
Depends on where you're looking. Actually, it's flip-flopping depending on where you're going at. If you do get them as a underdog, I think I would lean with the Dolphins on that. But the other game that's also a tight one, I think I'm going to go ahead. If you do get the Cardinals and the 2 points, I think I go ahead with that as my underdog pick of the week. So yeah, we'll go with that indeed. But Before we head on out, Chris, I want you to go ahead and make sure you pop on with your thoughts on what's going on with your great show, The Domination Sports Nation, before we head on out.
Thanks, Gerald. Took a hiatus this week. Too many tests in the high school life of Dom, so we'll be back early next week. We'll plan to wrap up Week 10 in the NFL. Talk about how the first poll for this new college football playoff season with the top 12 teams came out. See if anything shakes out this Saturday with any of those 12 teams and their slots. And then, two, do a little hot stove talk. The baseball GMs are meeting down in San Antonio. The courting of Juan Soto has already begun. Steve Cohen is backing up his Brinks trucks of money bags and talking to Scott Boras. So it looks like the first shot's been fired and what should be an interesting offseason in MLB.
Are you a Mets fan, Chris?
Yankees. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, we could probably do a whole show on how, heading into this World Series, we told all the Dodger fans in our lives that Aaron Boone sucks and stop complaining about Dave Roberts. And unfortunately, we're proven correct. And, we could do a follow-up episode on how Brian Cashman is kind of this glorified Steinbrenner Nepo baby. And you want to talk about the New York media, they treat him with kid gloves, him and Boone. So it's not like the old days and they're jumping down your throat when you're a manager of the Yankees, like the Billy Martin days. So yeah, a lot to be frustrated about with the Yankees, and plenty of Aaron Judge dropping fly ball memes. There's all sorts of good stuff for us to talk about.
Well, the Dave. I'm sorry, Gerald. I'll say this: the Dave Roberts backlash was warranted. I've been very clear on this as a huge Dodger fan. Dave Roberts. There were reports coming out in August that he might be playing for his job. And I don't find it as an accident that all of a sudden he started doing more gut calls during this run. And lo and behold, look what happened. I'm talking about the bunting. Folks, analytics, for those of you who don't know anything about analytics in baseball, bunting is a no-no. The fact that he won games because he was bunting in that Padres series, and those were crucial plays that they executed there that won him that series. And then leaving Buehler in to face one more batter to give him the confidence, leaving Blake Triton in to, based off his gut. Again, Dave Roberts managed one of the best runs I've ever seen in baseball, and he deserves his flowers, and he did exactly what we've been begging him to do for the last 5 seasons. We were begging him to do this. Look what happened. He did it, and look at the results. So I'm not going to go back and say, just because we won, now I'm going to support Dave Roberts. No. Now, as far as Brett Boone is concerned, I think and I'm not there on a day-to-day with the Yankees, but if you're going to blame Brett Boone for anything, you got to blame him for not having them do the fundamentals, not putting in Hill instead of Nestor, when Nestor got the scariest baseball player in the last 50 years out on one pitch. You can't have both, folks. He gets out Ohtani, who everyone was scared of, and then on sheer bad luck, you had left fielder for the Yankees. Why am I dropping? Verdugo.
Yeah.
Verdugo goes into the stands with it makes a great catch. It's not his fault. Momentum took him over there. Throws the ball, and then it advances the runners to third and second. If that doesn't happen, they're not walking Betts. And they're not worried about losing even if Betts gets a single. They're just going to get – it would have ended up being a tie. So there was a lot of I think there's a lot of nonsense sometimes in baseball. This is something I also realized the last few years, that I think we're so emotional and we're so ready to just blame everybody. And that's not just in baseball, it's in society. But the circumstances that came up through that time, that moment, no one. How do you blame Brett for that? I really don't.
Well, here's how. Nestor Cortez had not pitched in 5 weeks. He's not a reliever. Yeah, you got Ohtani out. That's a black swan event as far as I'm concerned. It's a fluke. Hill had good splits against Freeman and Ohtani, and he's been getting lefties out all postseason. But besides that, he does these other dumb, like he's a guy who will just go off the book of what Cashman tells him to do most of the year. And then when he does go with his gut, it blows up. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But there are other things like he's been too buddy with this team. Gleyber Torres doesn't run out balls. He says nothing to him. Lackadaisical defense. I mean, the fielding is a definite. I agree with you. It's a definite issue, but it's an organizational thing. They had Jason Dominguez, who they think is an ex Bernie Williams or Mickey Mantle or I don't know what. Guy doesn't even play at all in any of these series, and the reason being is he can't play left field. Well, why weren't you working with him this offseason? Why weren't you working with him when he was on a rehab assignment in the minors? And then two, like even in game one, he pulls Torres for a pinch runner, and guy at second base botches a potential double play that would have inevitably ended the game down the road. So he does things like that where 1 minute he's going with his gut, the other he isn't. But for me, I have a real problem with this top down. Like, I'm a player friendly coach. Girardi got fired because he was too hard on players, including like Gary Sanchez, who ended up being a bust. And it's Cashman wants to run the team. He needs a figurehead and he's got him. So, I didn't think going into this series, I thought they had a shot. I thought inevitably they probably weren't going to win because of the terrible fielding and base running and the fact that they rely on the home run too much. But, I have no problem with him, going with a gut decision, but not when you got a guy who has had arm trouble, hasn't pitched in 5 weeks, and never in his career has come in a game in that situation, not starting an inning with runners on base. I mean, the Ohtani thing was, it was remarkable. He was lucky, and like you said, a fantastic catch by Verdugo. But my point is, I don't think I've seen one game determine a World Series and let the air out of a team that much since Kirk Gibson's home run.
Yeah, it was. I gotta admit, it was that game 5. Honestly, no joke. People laugh when I tell them this. They can't believe when I say this because of so many of the games that I've watched. Game 3 of the Denver series in 2009 almost gave me a heart attack. They're like, why game 3 of the Denver series? What, game 7 of the Celtics finals didn't have you going crazy? I said, yes, it did. But what happened in that series was it was that pivotal game where the Lakers had lost to Boston the year before. They're in Denver, and Denver was scary. They just beat the Lakers in game 2 in LA, and I'm like, they have to get game 3 or this series is over. And Kobe turned into God the last 3 minutes of that game and ended up winning he hit that go-ahead 3-pointer over J.R. Smith. And I go, it was the same feeling. It was the same feeling I had in game 5 because I had already kind of came down to earth saying, okay, they're going to have to win it in 6 at home with Yamamoto. I'll take it. And then, of course, they're going through this process in the 5th inning. I had to turn the channel off and go watch A Devil Wears Prada just to calm my nerves. I hadn't done that in years. I was seriously, it was really killing me. But then I was following it and then turning back, following it, turning back. And then finally, I was able to kind of just stick with it with the Mookie at bat. Mookie obviously hits the ball to Rizzo, and I thought, oh, shit. Okay, that's it. The inning's over. And then, of course, we saw what happened, and then it became an avalanche after that. And then from then on, it was just, let's get this thing, get one run, and this game is over. And, of course, they did it. And, again, I'm sorry, Chris. This was probably one of the greatest 2 weeks of my life. I mean, the Lakers, the Dodgers beat both New York teams, and my Steelers beat both New York teams all in this 2 week span. And I'm just like, I don't know what's going on in New York. I love New York. I love New York. But I'm like, holy crap, all my teams are just smoking all the New York teams. And I'm happy because in my adult understanding life, I was able to watch the Lakers beat the Celtics in a finals, and now I've been able to watch the Dodgers beat the Yankees in a World Series. So again, I look, it doesn't feel as good, honestly, if it wasn't the Yankees. If it was Cleveland, if they had played Cleveland, I'd be like, hey, we won, I'm happy. But it's because it was New York, it really meant something. So
yeah,
and I'm hoping that it happens again next year. I really do.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. And then one more thing I thought with Boone, he took Cole out throwing 88 pitches, and so Dom and I were on our way to the Rutgers USC game. I went to Rutgers, so he's never been to a game or the Coliseum, so it was just cool to see them on the West Coast. And we're listening to the game in the car, and I kept telling Dom, they can't waste this outing. They can't waste this outing. They got to go up 1-0. You know, I don't trust Rodon tomorrow. They can't waste it. And what does he do? He pulls them after 88 pitches, and that's the thing, right? Like, if you're going to be that anal and go over spin rate and velocity and number of pitches, then keep them in the game. It's the playoffs. And these guys don't understand with analytics, like, you know, having done this in my day job, right? Like, you've got this large sample size of 162 games. Well, when the postseason happens, and this is even the case in football, everything goes out the window. Things start reverting to the mean or reversing course. And it just becomes its own standalone season. And like you said with bunting, like, I don't care if the analytics say you shouldn't bunt during a regular season. That's great logic. But you know what? When you need to scrape a run across, you do it. You can. I mean, you know, Rizzo getting hit by a pitch in one of those games was key. It kept an inning going. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm old. I'm jaded. I've seen enough Yankee championships. I wanted Dom to see one, but you know, when there's just incompetence and the whole like analytics is the tail wagging the dog, and we're going to make the lineup for you and you do what we say and you don't have input on things. I mean, I read Joe Torre's book that Tom Verducci wrote, and it was kind of like it was like right after the initial Moneyball happened in '02. And, you know, he was talking about towards his end of the run with the Yankees, Cashman wanted him to use more analytics. And he said, you know, it's a tool that you can use, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to be in that clubhouse and take a look at a guy. And he's like, I think he's ready. I think this is his day. And, you know, start someone or adjust the lineup. And that goes for any sport, right? Like, I'm so tired of the whole fourth down thing in football with the analytics. That's great. You may succeed 40% of the time in this given situation late in the game or whatever, and end of the field you're in, right? But if you're a dipshit like Zach Taylor and you call a bomb on 4th and 1, then what good are the analytics, right? Like, you can make the decision, but you've also got to call the right play.
Yeah, it looks, the thing with analytics is, and I call it analytics a lot of times, it works. It works in the regular season when the pressure isn't on. Now, I say that in baseball because baseball regular season is not the same as the NFL regular season. Regular season in the NFL, usually every week matters, whereas it doesn't matter as much in baseball. So analytics play a part, of course, because there's certain information that you have that you can look out for versus what they used to do back in the day, which is not even close to what they do now. I get that part, but you always have to feel what's going on, especially when it really, really matters. You got to feel what's going on. And if you don't do that, you can be wrong and have a good feel and be wrong. There was a Knack for the Dodgers pitched, and he ended up giving up a really bad inning. He gave up a grand slam against the Mets. I think it was game 2.
Yeah.
And the usual suspects came out of the woodwork. And again, I've been a Roberts detractor for years here, but I know the difference between a bad call and a call that you have no choice. This team did not have an ace coming into the playoffs, and they had no idea if Yamamoto or Buehler or Jack Flaherty was going to do what they ended up doing. No one knew. So Doc had to manage this as best he could. He had to give up some games so that he can make sure everybody had their fifth day. And everyone's like, well, why did you have Knack in there? I'm like, dude, you got no choice. And it was a good pitch that the guy hit. You know, it's like sometimes that happens. The Stanton pitch. I had a friend of mine she's the most obnoxious, negative, freaking human being on the planet. She only messages me because she's a huge Dodger fan. She's a childhood friend of mine. She's the only one that will only message me when things go bad. And she's like, see, they're going to lose. See, they're going to lose when Giancarlo hit that home run. I'm like, did you see that pitch? Did you see what Stanton did with it? He golfed it. He should not have even gotten close to that ball. And he hit it. Sometimes that happens. And I have to explain to people, I go, you guys are not watching. You guys think with your assholes. You don't think with your eyes and your head. And this run was so different than any of the runs except for 2017. But that team was so dominant. I don't think Roberts really needed to worry about anything. The only issue was they ran into a piece of fucking shit cheating assholes in Houston, and that was the year that we would have seen a Yankee Dodger World Series too. So other than that, it just, and 2020 was a whirlwind. I mean, they were down 3-1 and they were down 2-0 against Atlanta, and they had that huge letdown in Game 5 because Kenley Jansen couldn't close out the game. But those are typically how those series or those runs usually go. Sometimes it's like that. This one, I felt even though they went 5 with the Padres, it was probably one of the most dominant 3 games of baseball, those last 3 games against the Padres. And then it was the most dominant 4-win series because they absolutely just obliterated the Mets in those 4 wins. And then, of course, the Yankees, they just, winning in 5, winning 2 in New York, and they had already won 2 in New York earlier in the season. There was no doubt that this was the Dodgers the year. Everything just kept pointing to it, and it ended up coming into fruition.
Yep, it was your time. I mean, there's not much you could do about that. But getting back to Nestor Cortez, and you lay a fastball over the plate to Freddie Freeman, what do you expect? My wife's sitting here. I mean, she follows sports. She's not into baseball as Dom and I are. And she said to me, why the F are they pitching to Freeman like this? And I'm like, maybe they'll start pitching him outside. And once they did, they managed to get him out a few times, or at least keep him in the ballpark. And I'm like, I'm a friggin' idiot sitting here. I've watched a lot of baseball in my life, but why are you putting a fastball over the plate to Freddie Freeman? I just did it throughout the series. I don't get it.
He, by the way, you know why he knew that was coming?
Was someone banging on a garbage can in the dugout? I don't know.
Thank God it wasn't. What happened was, so he had talked to Shohei because he gave that. It was the same. Was it the 4-seam? Right, it was a 4-seam, right?
Yeah.
So he gave that same pitch to Shohei, and he popped it up.
Yep.
So he was talking, and this is coming from Freddie Freeman, by the way. I didn't make this up. Freddie Freeman talked to Ohtani. He's like, "Hey man, what did you see out there?" And he said he threw the 4-seam fastball. So he was sitting on that first pitch, and and Nestor threw it to him. Now, in defense of your pitchers, Chris, and again, maybe it's because I'm happy and I'm trying to be positive here, but really, that fourth home run in Game 4, that wasn't anywhere near inside fast. They threw outside, and he still knocked it out.
Yeah, I mean that was a fluke.
I just don't think, honestly. I know we're never going to know this, but I don't know. I guess here's what I thought, because Hill tends to throw those high fastballs, and I don't know if necessarily Freeman was going to bite on those in that particular situation. Again, we're never going to know. I thought, for worst case scenario, that if Hill was pitching instead of Nestor, let's just say Hill was able to get Shohei out as well. I think that he would have ended up walking him at worst case. That's what I would have thought, because I don't know if he would have ever thrown it down the pipe, and I think Freeman would have been looking for those high fastballs and just waiting them out until he obviously threw one down the pipe. And again, I think I'm just trying to maybe calm the waters down. I like Brett Boone a little. I like Brett Boone, and maybe that's where the soft part is. And I really like Nestor. Really like Nestor. I think he's a good guy. So, and I wanted to mean something too. It wasn't just mistakes. I know it was, but a lot of it is the fact that some guys sometimes do their homework and they guess right, and that's what happened there.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, it was what I read in Sports Illustrated, what Joe Kelly said, and that the Dodgers completely scouted the Yankees and they exploited them. They just followed the game plan to a T, and it's not surprising. Even that Cleveland series, they won in 5, but there was a lot of sloppiness. There were a lot of games they let Cleveland back in. Their bullpen was crap, a lot of walks, and you saw that against the Dodgers. I mean, game one shouldn't even come to that point. So you could say there's a lot of ifs and buts with Nestor and this and that, but it shouldn't even been that situation. There were multiple times the Yankees had that game won and they gave it back. So there's not much you could do about that.
Well, looking forward to seeing you next week. Sorry, Gerald, we kind of derailed this, but I haven't had a chance to talk to a Yankee fan, and I'm Chris. I appreciate you talking with me about this. I'm still on cloud nine, dude. I can't get enough Dodger info right now. The hot stove is burning up right now. I can't wait to continue to watch it.
Well, before we head on out on this edition of Inside Sports Fantasy Football Baseball, KP is asking, should he trade CMC and Evans for Waddle and Jefferson? He needs wide receivers. A great question. And again, if you have questions out there, isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com or put in the comments below and we'll get it to the guys. But Chris, I'll start off with you, my friend. By the way, Chris, we've been on the air 6 seasons, not 5.
Wow.
Years since 2018, my friend. So with that, CMC and Evans for Waddle and Jefferson. Would you do it?
If you have running back depth and you've been doing well without McCaffrey, I think it's worth a shot. Now, whether you'll find someone to bite or not, you might not. What you may have to do is hope McCaffrey has a nice week, and then on Monday, start making that offer around your league.
Joe, your thoughts? As someone who does have CMC on his roster, would you trade CMC and Evans for Waddle and Jefferson if you are really in dire need of wide receivers?
So who are your running backs?
KP, who is your running backs? And we'll get that question
Evans
answered.
is hurt, right? Still?
Yeah.
Is he going to be gone for a while?
That I don't know.
He's 3-5 in his league. His running backs are CMC, Dobbins, Brian Robinson, Tracy Jr., and Mr. WR1, wide receiver 1, is Ladd McConkey with Evans on the bench.
So, yeah, you do need wide receivers. You got serviceable running backs, so I could see why you'd want to do that.
Joe?
Yeah, you might have to do that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. There's your answer, KP. Great question. And continued success and good luck. Hopefully you'll get back up to 500 and actually get home with your season very strongly. But it is, of course, Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Again, isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com, or just put it in the comments right there, and I'll get your fantasy football questions answered for you. But Chris, Joe, great to have you here. To let everybody know that's watching or wanting the Lakers Fast Break that's coming up, we're just going to go to another channel. We're going to close out the show here. I'll just bring up the show right away for Joe and I for the Lakers Fast Break to talk about the dismal road performance and JJ Redick, and we'll talk about that. But yes, it is Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Wishing you a great NFL Week 10 and wishing you all the success in your fantasy football league from all of us right here at Inside Sports Fantasy Football.